Namo Buddhaya, Namo Amitabha. Hello everyone. So today I feel like talking about what's the origin of humans on earth. So many people ask, did the Buddha talk about the origin of humans on earth? Yes, indeed, the Buddha talked about it, and you can find the answers from the sutras. So today let's discuss it. So in the Western world, there are two types of commonly held beliefs on the origin of humans on earth. That's the theory of creationism and naturalism. So according to the creationism, God creates everything. We were created by God. I assume this is true. And according to Christianity, we all just have this life and the next. There were no past lives. I assume this is true, that God creates all of us. And God had to be fair, equal, unbiased, all loving and compassionate, right? How come there is so much inequality in the world? How come some people were born with so much blessings, with beauty, wealth, and wisdom, whereas others, they were born in poverty and all kinds of illnesses, and they had to go through so much sufferings in life. The inequality in the world cannot seem to justify the theory of creationism. Just to say that we were created by an external being, by God, does not seem to be so sensible. Or otherwise, how could there be so much inequality, unfairness in the world? If God is all loving and compassionate and equal and unbiased, then we should all look the same. We should all have the same appearance and also blessed with the same amount of wealth and wisdom. There shouldn't be so many vast differences and inequality in this world. So this theory does not seem to be so sensible. And according to the Darwinian theory of evolution, humans evolved from apes millions of years ago. So assume this is true, then scientists should be able to find some intermediate fossils, like half ape, half humans, right? So according to the Darwinian theory, the evolution did not just happen overnight. It's a gradual process. Slowly, humans evolved from apes. But this kind of intermediate fossils were never found, not even during the Cambrian explosion, when lots of fossils were being discovered. And some scientists even calculate the probability for the Darwinian theory to work, acting on DNA to create those animals that were being found in the Cambrian explosion. And they found out that the probability was 1 chance in 100,000 trillion to generate just a single protein, much less than the millions that were required in a cell to create those animals. So the chance just seemed to be extremely slim for the Darwinian theory to work, acting on DNA to create those animals. If you're curious about what I just talked about, I'll drop the link below. And there is a growing number of scientists and biologists all started to doubt and are skeptical on the Darwinian theory, despite a lot of people held it as a fact. Just because many people believed in the theory, it does not necessarily mean that it is the truth. I remember when I was being taught about this at school, I always found it so difficult to believe that highly intelligent humans were actually evolved from apes, or we share a common ancestor with the chimps and the chimpanzees. I found it extremely difficult to believe. And when we think about our ancestors, we tend to think that they were much more backward than us. But this is not always the case. Look at the pyramids. Who built the pyramids? If the Egyptians built the pyramids, then they had to be highly intelligent and also highly advanced. Just look at the sophisticated geometry and how they could move all these millions of tons of stones extremely heavy stones and placed them so neatly all the way to the top and with such impressive height of the pyramid. So this still remains as a mystery to the modern day people. And also look at ancient Chinese and the ancient Chinese inventions, the architects, the paintings, the literature, the poetry. I definitely felt my ancestors were much more intelligent than people nowadays. And the ancient Indians, the ancient Persians, they were also extremely intelligent. So maybe we are much more technologically advanced than our ancestors, but in terms of spiritual development and intelligence and other aspects, it seems that our ancestors could be very well more advanced than us. So what did the Buddha say on the origin of humans on earth? This is extremely fascinating, and I highly recommend you to go and read the Aganya Sutra, where the Buddha talked about it in detail. So the Buddha told us that each world will go through 4 periods. The periods of formation, existence, destruction, and emptiness. And after that, a new world will be formed. So at the end of the previous world, not the current earth, but the world before earth, before earth was even formed. So when that world was being destroyed, lots of beings migrated to the light sound heaven. So the light sound heaven is also called the Abhasvara heaven, or sometimes being translated as the heaven of the streaming radiance. So this is the 3rd level of heaven in the 2nd jhana realm of the form realm. So this is Buddhist cosmology. It can be a little bit confusing for people who are not familiar with. So the Buddha talked about there are 28 levels of heavens. The Buddhist scriptures have the most detailed descriptions about heavens and hells. If you want to know more about heavens and hells, go and read the Buddha Sutras. It's much, much more detailed than any other books you can find on earth, than any other religions. So in Buddhism, there are 28 levels of heavens, and this can be divided into 3 realms: the desire realm, the form realm, and the formless realm. So in the form realm, there are 4 jhana planes. So jhana means meditation. According to the beings' meditative levels, they will be born in those corresponding levels of heavens. So the light sound heaven is the 3rd level heaven in the 2nd jhana plane of the form realm. So we'll talk about the Buddhist cosmology and different levels of heavens in detail in the near future. So why was it called the light sound heaven? Because those beings communicated with light. When they speak, they emit light, and they understood each other. So they were much more advanced than us. And the light was acting like the sound. And after a very long time, when those beings' lifespans in the heaven are up, so the Buddha told us that even the heavenly beings, they do not enjoy eternal lifespan. Although they enjoy a tremendously long lifespan in the heaven, but it's not eternal yet. There is still a time where their lifespan is finished and they have to come back down, and most likely to the lower realm of reincarnation. So when those heavenly beings, when their lifespans were finished, and then they're being reborn on this world. So at that time, that was just a beginning of the formation of earth. There was just a single mass of water and all darkness. And those beings, when they came down, they were still mind-made, subluminous. They were feeding on meditative delight, so they did not require any food. And they were moving through the air. They were genderless. There were no male, no female. They were simply known as beings. And at that time, there were no sun, no moon, no stars, no constellations. And most likely because those beings' luminosity were too bright. So there was no distinguish between day and night. And after a very long time, the earth nectar appeared. And when the earth nectar appeared, some beings, they were a bit reckless and they tasted the earth nectar and they loved it. And that was when craving began in them. And as they kept on eating more of this earth nectar, their luminosity disappeared. And due to the disappearance of their luminosity, the sun and the moon appeared, and so were the stars and constellations in day and night. And as they kept on eating more of this earth nectar, there was a divergence in appearance. The ones that ate less, they were more beautiful than the ones ate more, and then the ones with more greed and craving. So the beautiful ones, they looked down on the ugly ones. And due to the vanity of the beautiful ones, the earth nectar disappeared. And different kinds of food appeared and then disappeared. And as they kept on feeding on this food on earth, they became more divergent in appearances. And again, the beautiful ones will look down on the ugly ones. And eventually, as they kept on eating all this different food on earth, the female characteristics appear on women and the male characteristics appear on men. Initially, these beings were genderless, and then as they kept on feeding more of these different foods on earth, they were the different appearances, some with female characteristics and some with male characteristics. And when the females stayed at the male for too long, and vice versa, they became lustful, and they started to engage in sexual intercourse. And these activities were deemed as extremely immoral at that time, and people really shamed them for that. And what was deemed as extremely immoral at that time, today people are treated as extremely normal. So those people, in order to hide away their immorality, they started to build houses. And when they kept throwing themselves excessively into immorality, stealing appeared, and blaming and lying, etc., all kinds of evil were born in the mind of those people. And that was when they decided to elect a king to judge over what's right and wrong. So the Buddha talked about how the social order were formed. And some beings, they became quite remorseful about their behaviors, and they decided to go and meditate and set aside all unskillful means. And that was the beginning of Brahmins. So the Buddha also talked about how the 4 different social classes were developed in India. So this story on human origination was extremely fascinating, and I highly encourage you to go and read about it, and the Buddha talk about it in much more detail than what I just described to you. To me, this version of human origin seemed to be more reasonable than to say humans were created by an external god or evolved from apes. But of course, you feel free to choose what you want to believe. I'm not here to convince anybody or to look for fights and debates. I'm simply here to present a third alternative that was presented by the Buddha, a perfect and complete enlightened being who rightly understands the truth of life and the universe. Humans, as unenlightened beings, what we know is very limited, and we may only just see a piece of the puzzle, and we try to deduce conclusion from that piece of puzzle. And this may likely lead to mistakes, whereas the Buddha is a perfect, complete, enlightened being who understands everything perfectly. He sees really the whole picture. So I believe in the words of the Buddha. I believe in the words of a perfect enlightened being due to their perfect wisdom and knowledge, and also they will not lie to us. So some people ask, where are the aliens? So according to the Buddha, our ancestors were aliens from the heaven realm, and we were immigrants on earth. So if you're interested in extraterrestrial life, you go and read the Buddha Sutras. There are really a lot of detailed descriptions on different worlds, different planets, and also on different Buddha lands. And the Buddha told us that the easiest way for us to realize the perfect enlightenment is to to recite the name of Amitabha Buddha and to attain rebirth in Amitabha Buddha's Pure Land. This is the easiest way for us to exit the cycle of reincarnation, to realize the perfect enlightenment, and we can also obtain the perfect wisdom like the Buddha, to awaken to the truth of life and the universe. If you want to know about all these origin stories, whether they're true or not, first attain rebirth in Amitabha Buddha's Pure Land. There, you will be able to realize Buddhahood, to have perfect and complete wisdom about the truth of life and the universe. And you will know what is true or not. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Amitabhaya.